On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss our podcast upgrading. Yay! We discuss marketing trends and being authentic and many other topics. Let's jump into it. Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral1.com. Coach Gleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
I used to be a marketer like you until I took an arrow to the knee.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I'm your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean. And today we're kind of leveling up. We're trying to. We're beginning the process of leveling. So, yeah, we've been.
Congrats.
Yeah, grats. It's always grats.
What she said.
Yeah. So the intent is, and we'll get into the topic as well, but I want to share first about how we want to level up this podcast for the people listening. I mean, there are a number of fronts, but for those of you that are watching on video, you can probably see Sean's background is a little bit more fancy. It's the beginning of our intent.
Transformation.
Yeah, we're going to turn ourselves into a butterfly. We're entering the cocoon phase right now. And I'm thinking like within, in December, we'll reach our final form, like Frieza. Wow, we're just throwing like nerd analogies left and right. Love it. But the intent is that, our podcast is always meant for, to give people that really need it good, solid advice for what is currently working in marketing, for, in publishing and whatnot. And so there are a couple of areas of improvement that we've identified. One of them just being the physical, what you see. We're dominantly an audio podcast. We have a YouTube presence, and it's kind of gets neglected. Most of our listeners are audio, by far, and it's one of those things that we want to kind of grow into that video, a video presence as well. And then, just the quality of our sound. We wanted to improve. So we've got improvements there that our sound is going to be recorded digitally and then kind of turned into, analog. We're recording analog right now. Like I've got a USB mic that has, the XMR or XML cable that we can use that will improve that. And, my face right now, my videos, like my face is washed out. With light, I need to get curtains and a bunch of other things. And so, we realized like, man, it must be like 40% of our company's business comes in through the podcast, that like through e-commerce, crowdfunding, stuff like that. And I mean, it's just a very large piece of the puzzle. And so part of it, it's like, how do you market your podcast and other things like that, but really, I think the most important thing is to deliver a very high quality product. And now that we are able to kind of upgrade our equipment and, to really think more about how it is that we're recording, we wanted to invest into that. So that's like one area is the actual physical, what you see, and then another is what you hear, right? Very important. So
Yeah, and I suppose we've neglected a lot of our own marketing because we always market other people's things. Often I'll meet clients and they're like, "Oh, you're actually Sean." They're kind of surprised that yes, I actually work on accounts. I'm actually help our clients. It's not that I'm just like here a talking head and then I delegate everything to the team. So that's one reason why improvements to our own things are slow or they're just non-existent. Like our podcast, we basically had someone doing the podcast and they were doing it. I don't think it was particularly amazing. It got done, and we're happy that it got done. It's better than nothing, but it wasn't really, I suppose, to the kind of professional standards that I suppose we originally envisioned or would have hoped for it to be, or where we kind of want to go with it now. I think it's the same with our website. And our website works, it's functional, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
the slickest website,
Yeah.
because most of our clients come through referrals, word of mouth, and I think that's just a testament to our work. But it would be nice to have something that's a bit more polished. And I suppose as we now get closer to Christmas, a lot of our kind of kickstarting side of the business slows down, and that means we can kind of pivot and focus a bit more on our own marketing our own business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's curious. I'll say this, that our editors have a lot of. They're actually very skilled podcast editors. The problem is that, well, number one is money and time. But one and two, money and time. The amount of money that we're able to pay for editors, and the amount of time that they can devote based on the amount that we're able to pay per episode, right? And so we kind of settle into a groove. One of the things that we're currently lacking right now, we have a beginning that we cut an intro, we then move to some music, and then I introduce us with the thing that always just comes off my head. Hey, everybody, welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. And then we just kind of begin. And I think that even the formatting, we're going to change the formatting. One of the big things that we currently, one of our limitations, partially, it's self-inflicted, really, not the fault of our podcast editors or anything, but we generally don't. I don't know that they listen to the whole episode. They will listen to, like, they'll edit the whole thing for sound and improve quality where needed and whatnot, but they edit the beginning intro, they edit the end, and then they use kind of what I would kind of, as a layperson, I'm not an editor. You actually are, Sean. You used to edit our podcast. They just provide like a templated sound, whatever overlay or overhaul to what happens in the middle, unless we have particular timestamps that we ask them to, like if one of us has to use the restroom, or if something like that, then the podcast editors will, if we mark that time down, they'll go to that specific time and make sure it's cut correctly so it sounds like we're making sense. But actually, I was thinking of the word they don't cut the word from my uh you know thought. You hear my raw, unfiltered thoughts, which sometimes I am very I should be more self-conscious of the number of times that I say and the amount of times that my brain stops before it completes a thought is disturbing. When I listen to myself, it bothers me. So it'll be nice to. We're actually going to step up the editing game, and our podcast editors are actually our former podcast editors, who actually will probably edit this episode. Um, they are retiring kind of from the game temporarily. They've had a family, and so they've got a new baby, and they're thinking, like, is this really something that we want to do? And so they're kind of laying down the torch for a while. And we found we have another podcast editing team called the Podcast Upload, which is they do some big names. I've had some interactions with them in the recent past, and they're a fantastic team that's going to take up the torch. It's going to be like 3 times or 4 times, 3 times as expensive to make this happen, but it's going to be. I think it's going to be worth it. Really to invest into the content quality for you guys. There's only so much that somebody can endure of low quality content, or I don't want to say low quality, like okay quality. So, and there's a reason that we took you out of the editing position. It just is very time consuming.
Yeah, because I used to edit out all the ums and ahs, and it did take a while because I always felt it felt smoother um, and that type of thing. But yeah, it was time consuming, and we got pretty busy. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So
Yeah.
I either have to take on less clients, or we need to pass the mantle, so to speak. And at that point, I think I edited over 200 episodes at that
Yeah, it was like
at that time. So
150,
I was
think.
looking forward to like a break, to be honest, from editing it, like a weekly podcast. So it was nice to kind of change gear for a bit. But I don't mind taking it back on for a while as that we transition to another company.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose yeah, we're going to change the podcast name to the Andrew Lowen Experience,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
you're just gonna
Whatever I care about. No.
yeah, the opener is just going to be slapping on the table. That's it,
Yeah.
like, and yeah, we'll have my name. I'll change to Jamie, and we'll just talk about UFOs, aliens, and drugs.
In comedy. Yeah, everybody says
Yeah.
that I look like Joe
And
Rogan. There are so many people
MMA.
that say that, which is funny because, actually, Joe Rogan lives, like, less than an hour from me. I moved here and then he moved to Texas as well, and I actually train, jujitsu with one of his bodyguards. So he's like, "Yeah, man, if you wanna get to meet Joe Rogan or you ever wanna, like, hang out, you gotta go here at this time and, whatever," and I don't wanna be, like, too specific.
Does this bodyguard know you very well? Because
Yeah,
I wouldn't
he
want my
does.
bodyguard telling random people where I am.
Yeah,
Isn't that the whole purpose of a bodyguard? Oh, he
yeah.
must trust you.
Well, there's, like, a team of 30 people that guard, like, him, his family, his home, and the business and the comedy club that he runs and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it would be fun to talk to him at
Because
some
he
point.
rolls, doesn't he? You could roll with him.
He's a black belt also, jujitsu black belt, long time. I mean, he's got all sorts of different. I mean, he's a very capable fighter, very capable. Super. But it'll be fun to talk to him at some point. I'm sure our paths will cross eventually.
Well, if someone on Joe's staff is listening to this, contact Andrew. We can organize Joe Rogan
Yeah, yeah, I'd be down. So I could probably
rolling
serve as
wrestling.
like I don't know if I could serve as like a conversational replacement or not, but
Yeah, you'd be as like a double if you go somewhere public, and
yeah.
you'll be shot as
Yeah.
the dummy, the fake. Well, apparently Hitler did that. Apparently there was a bunch of Hitlers that were doubles that if
Interesting comparison, Um,
I don't know why. Sorry, it just made me think of that. But yeah, it's just I know in history there have been
yep.
people who have
I
had other
mean,
people dress up as them. So it had stunt doubles. That's we have it in
yeah,
acting, don't we?
that's
So
a really common thing. Like, I don't know what news you get or whatever, but Kim Jong Un has doubles and Joe Biden had a double, and there was a guy that was like 6.5 feet tall that was Joe Biden's double. It's like, dude, how did
have you seen
yeah.
those like CIA masks where like it's like looks like a person and like they take it off?
I've definitely
Like
seen
it's kind
Mission
of like
Impossible,
or
all
the Scooby Doo mask.
yeah. So, yeah, definitely.
Look, we're
I always wondered if that's like a real thing. It's like, let's 3D print a mask real quick, and now I'm that guy, and put a little chip on my neck so that I sound like him. I don't know. Honestly, I wouldn't doubt it. I'd be a little, you know, it's 2025, tech has
real life
advanced so
real life
quickly.
deep fakes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well,
So
actually, this comes reminds me. We're already talking about conspiracies, which is great. So we're living up to our new name, the Andrew Lowen experience.
just
But
a temporary name. We'll be back to the Crowdfunding Nerds in probably like 5-10 minutes.
all day, all night. So, in terms of leveling up our podcast, I think we also want to talk about the little things, right? Now, the
Yeah.
little things can be the big things. And I was actually just this week, I saw an advertisement on Brave, and Brave, they've got these ads just take up the whole screen when you open a new tab. And it was for this new marketing agency. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. A marketing agency that's using Brave to market their services. I'll check it out. But this was like an AI marketing service that the goal was that they would use AI to create ads for you. And I was like, well, that's that's kind of a letdown. And they had these like mock-up ads. So this is what you could look like, and the one was for like a beer commercial, but they hadn't noticed that they had this shot of like of a beer, and it was like kind of zooming out. It's supposed to be like in like a bar or a pub or something, but they hadn't noticed that the AI had actually slowly increased the amount of beer in the ad. So I was like, what? And that's where like the little things matter. You don't want an ad where, oh yeah, well, if you hadn't noticed, but this beer was slowly increasing over time, just magically getting more beer into the glass. And I think this is the danger where people are relying on AI. You might have like really polished looking garbage because it doesn't matter how good it looks if there's this continuity error and something doesn't happen. And that would never happen in real life because, well, you can't bend the law of physics,
Yeah.
and it's not going to happen with like CGI because no human being is going to irrationally increase the beer this is done for a specific effect. But the fact it was slowly going up and it was barely noticeable, obviously proves it's AI. And I think those little things happen. I don't think any big brand is going to want to risk damaging their reputation or their IP with kind of silly mistakes like that, which could easily be missed because
Yeah.
AI could just throw in something goofy. You might find someone in the background has 3 arms. It's just like
Yeah.
that's how AI rendered it, or some
It's
guy has his head on backwards. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't take a big mistake for someone to feel like they've been embarrassed publicly, and that one public embarrassment it causes you to be fired as an agency. That's one thing that we really have over time put in quite a lot of quality controls to prevent errors like that. Obviously we don't use AI for videos and images and things. We use things that people can relate to. But and the as you mentioned, AI being a little thing that actually can have big consequences. If if you as a company are discovered to have one element on, let's say if you're running a Kickstarter, one element on your page is AI, then it casts out on everything else that I'm looking at, every single thing.
Hmm.
Because you don't really get to see all that much. Like if you actually think about it, if your game has 1,000 cards in it, you might show me 25 on the actual page. And you know, if if one of those, or if even a section that's not even related to your gameplay has AI in it, I'm like, okay, these people are now suspect, or this whole project is suspect to me, and I'm very likely to not back something like that. I personally don't super care if a project is AI. Just let me know if it is and help me understand what you're actually presenting me. Don't try to pull the wool over my eyes, or don't fail to address that you've used AI, because then I feel like I'm being misled, and the misleading is as much of a public embarrassment as a blunder, like a video that fills where beer fills itself up. So
I think
David
we're going to
Blaine could
start.
do it.
Tabletone is a phenomenal app. I use it every time I play tabletop role-playing games with my family. It greatly enhances the immersive experience. In fact, it's night and day using it and not using it. It can also be used for board games or any card game. It's great background music. It's made by a company based in Austria who have their own studio, who have developed their own software specifically to cater to your specific needs within the different game settings. So you can control intensity, there's different background noises. You can get it for free, and there's also a trial that you can run for 2 weeks that will give you full access to their entire catalog of sounds and audio. Definitely check it out. Link is in the description. Visit tabletone.app for more details.
Well, I think we're going to start seeing, I don't know how the States is, you have completely different laws there on food, but here in Europe, they actually have to put on the packaging, artificial flavors, artificial coloring, and those things. So our marketing messaging here is no artificial flavors, no artificial coloring. So you might find people, market their games now, or market things saying, hey, no AI, no
Yeah.
artificial
Yeah.
intelligence being used. And that could actually be a marketing push that people can actually use to say, hey, look, we're not using AI, we've done that intentionally.
Yeah.
And you can tell by the quality of the illustrations, you can tell by the way that it is, it's got this kind of rustic feel. 'Cause another problem with everyone using AI, it all starts to look the same. The AI has like really one style. It's this highly
Yep.
polished, a little bit uncanny look, and obviously it's going to improve. We're seeing constant improvements to it. Which
But it
is
has no soul, though. That's the
it has
biggest
the
problem.
character. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that for a company that's like a first time creator, it's not as big of a selling point as you think to say you have no AI. I would actually call it a hygiene factor. It's almost like just because you say that doesn't mean that I'm going to buy yours instead of, some other one that doesn't mention it. It's just kind of like not having a playthrough video. It's like just because you have a playthrough video doesn't mean that I'm more likely to back it. But if you're missing one, it is suspect, right? And there are some cases like where projects will launch without a playthrough video, or without a rule book. I actually launched the first Deliverance campaign, I think, without a rule book. I can't remember, but then I put the rule book in during the campaign, and it was one of the things that I wish that I had ready. I want to say that it wasn't ready because we hadn't yet finished kind of pulling it from a Google Doc into the final illustrated rule book, and I wanted people to see the fancy version instead of seeing a rules document that makes that where everything looks like it's just one scrolling thing of text. I wanted people to see it with images and whatnot, but we ended up launching without the rule book because it wasn't ready until like a week after we launched, and that was suspect for some people, and maybe they backed it because they were very interested in the game, but they're like, I am not continuing through for the 30 days of this campaign and letting you charge my credit card without seeing that rule book. But they're like, I'm in right now, but I
Mhm.
need to like see more to solidify my decision. And that's something that, that's one of those things that we call a hygiene factor, where the fact that you don't have something that I would say is like a essential for decision making for some people will cause you to lose those people. And there are some that are so motivated by, is this AI or how did you use AI in this project, that you could very well lose out on those backers. Like you will have people that back your game that cancel, and maybe they jump in again at the pledge manager or whatever, but they need that information in order to feel like they're making a good decision, or something that they're supporting something is really what they're doing. They're supporting you and supporting your brand, your movement, your idea. And if they're actually supporting, the Terminator and, whatever that company is, that nuked the world and launched the robot attack, Genesis, I can't remember. Anyway.
Truth be told, I've never seen Terminator. So
Oh my goodness. You are missing out.
it
That's
was
because you're not. y- We'll fix
before my
that.
time, I suppose.
We'll fix that when you get over here. There are certain movies you just
I
have to
well,
watch.
it's another thing that you know the stories. So what's the point of it's so popular. I understand the stories. So it's like, why watch it?
Well, it's kind of like what why would you miss out on the one of the greatest sources of memes, or like, have you ever seen that video where it's like, oh mother, what a beautiful day, and it's Sarah Connor
And then it
holding
blows
the
up
fence.
the
Yeah.
fence. Yeah, I've seen it in the
Yeah,
meme. Yeah,
so I mean, there are so many other memes like that, but I literally used a meme or
I'll be back.
yes, yeah, that became a thing. But I used a T1000 reference in jujitsu yesterday when I was teaching it, and so T1000 is the bad guy from Terminator 2 that like becomes like liquid goo and absorbs parts back into himself and is very hard to kill, and it's awesome. You just have to see it. It's one of those like Rocky. If you tell me you haven't seen Rocky, it'd be
I've seen
equally a
that.
surprise.
Yeah.
So, you know, um, but anyway, back to improving the actual podcast. We should probably improve the content of what it is we're talking about. You know, so just in general, the process, like how we record, won't change. What the goal is to just have a free flowing conversation, where we discuss ideas and we have a general bumpers of a topic that we want to discuss, or maybe something that happened during the week, that, or something we're going through that we're is an active thing that we're dealing with. So rather than being like a topical podcast entirely, it's more like what's going on now, and that is meant to it will constantly train people over time, and so it just like we're kind of being trained as we're discussing it and rationalizing, reasoning through why this or that in regard to marketing and business. But the introduction of our podcast is always, you know, on this episode of Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss this particular topic. That way, what I wanted to do is I wanted people to know what it is that they're listening to, so that if we go on a diatribe about Terminator and people like, well, I'm not interested in learning about Terminator, I'm here for marketing or I'm here for business or whatever, they can have an understanding, a general understanding of what it is that we're talking about, and why they should continue listening or whatever. And so that kind of will just having an early understanding of that, I think is probably the most important thing. And that way it's like, why am I listening? Why am I just gonna, why am I gonna deal with this ad, or why am I gonna deal with the off topic discussion, and before they bring it back on, and so that's always been important. But we're actually going to switch to a cold open. And Sean, you want to explain the cold open and why you hate it so much?
By the cold open, you mean the like the kind of montage open?
Yeah,
It's like
so it's
something that's really shocking. It's like,
well,
then I told my mother, and you won't believe what it's like this dramatic music. Yeah, I find those really irritating. I know they say, oh, it's this is what people do. Joe Rogan doesn't do that, does he? He just opens his podcast, and he's one of the
yeah,
most successful in the world. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like if we've got to a society where people can't hold their attention for an hour and actually pay attention. They need some type of like clickbaity shock bait thing in the first 10 seconds to actually draw them in. um so I don't tend to like those intros. I find just starting the podcast is great with it to kind of open it, introducing the topic, and
yeah,
going from there. Yeah, so I don't, I'm not a huge fan of that, but yeah, you want to test it out. And then
yeah,
look, if listeners, let us know what you prefer, and that's obviously going to help us. So
yeah,
you can always email us or just reach out to the Crowdfunding Nerds community.
yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the podcast is for you, the listener. And if you prefer, if we just got straight to the topic, or if we had a little intro, if we had some like shocking, you know, hype reel for the first 10
I'm not
seconds.
envisioning it like a shocking hype reel. I'm more thinking about it in terms of there's an interesting, engaging moment in the podcast that you probably wouldn't want to miss, or that that also kind of highlights the topic in action. That's, I think, how we intend to open. And it might be like 30 seconds to a minute, but it should be useful information rather than like the clickbait that gets you to listen to the whole thing. Um, and so we'll see kind of how that works. It was actually a recommendation that was made to us by the new podcasting team. They're like, we think you should switch to a cold open. And these guys are not just kind of fly by night people. They have, famous actors and influencers that they run their podcasts, or like companies that, make $200 million a year. That they are the podcast editors for some of these companies.
We
And
should interview them.
absolutely, that's going to happen for sure. And so I think that I'm willing to listen and to try and to grow, and admit that I'm not the expert. Even in marketing, I still look at myself as a student. I've had lots and lots of time, 100, I mean, over 1,000, well over 1,000 clients, and approaching 2,000, actually. But the each individual client is its own puzzle. And I feel like by taking the perspective of a student rather than the expert, that, oh, you got to listen to me, it allows me to continue to grow in wisdom and knowledge, and also kind of change with the times. I think that a lot of people that just say I'm the expert, they actually may be the expert right now, given, let's just assume that whoever this random made up person is that I'm talking about is correct. Well, then 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road, if they haven't adapted, especially with how quickly things change in the 2020 to 2030. I mean, man, this is not the time to call yourself the expert and stop learning, right? So,
And I
um,
think one thing that makes podcasts interesting is guests. So one thing I'd like to really see more in our podcast moving forward is just getting different industry professionals, guests. I think that's what it's going to make the podcast interesting. That we have limited experience, we have limited touch points with the things that we're working on. It's always changing because we're always introducing to kind of new things. But I do think that by having guests that have very different experiences, have very different focuses than what we are, I think it's going to create far more enriching content for everyone, including
yeah,
ourselves. So that's, I think, one way we can kind of improve moving forward. Because I think a lot of the times our guests are kind of ad hoc. It's like a week
Yeah.
before or something. It's like, oh, do you want to come on our podcast? And if you're listening and you have something that you really want to share, reach out to us. We're always willing to have people on the
Yeah.
podcast, as long as we're content driven first. We're not going to have you on for the sake of having someone on, but if you've got something that you really want to share, could it be a case study, something you've discovered? I know one of our clients we're consulting with tried during their process of capturing emails, they also captured mobile numbers, and then they sent out a text when they went live on Kickstarter, and it did really well. So having that person on the podcast to just describe that, something that we haven't done before, we haven't really had a conversation about that topic, something that they tested. That's the kind of perfect example of like a case study where there's something you can do. Or if you're a publisher and you want to advertise your next big launch and the things that you learned, then more than welcome to jump on and let us know what you did right or what you did wrong.
Definitely. Asher McClenahan, if you have messaging that you want to share, you use us as your conduit. As long as the conversation is interesting and benefits other people, I'm very open to it. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is that it'd be nice to have highly seasoned and experienced people that can share, years of life lessons on our podcast. And we have had some of those people. But I really want someone who is actively participating and working on marketing, even if they've cracked the code or not cracked the code. If they have experienced frustration or success or both, I want to learn about those things. Like, what's happening right now? What are you doing that's working or not working? Because if we can, I mean, if we're talking to somebody that is working hard and trying to make something work and they've found a lot of ways that fail, that those conversations are still worthwhile, because you guys listening will have, that maybe their process is flawed, or maybe their mentality, or the things that they've tried are obvious. You shouldn't do this or that. You'll be able to learn from those conversations, not just to make sure that you guys don't make those same mistakes, but that you learn how that person's mentality was off, or how that person's methodology was wrong, or where they could fix it. Those are the types of lessons that really fascinate me, that I kind of really get me excited. And that's why, I don't need to talk to somebody who is, the quote unquote expert. I need to talk to somebody who's trying today. I want to talk to somebody who's trying to make a name for themselves, because, I mean, there are lots of people who have interviewed there are many successful people. Like, we interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, we interviewed Marcin Sorkot from GameFound, we interviewed, of course, Asher McClenahan, the head of games at Kickstarter. We've interviewed lots of people, and we'll interview big people as well. But those people, when they were when they to their varying degrees, they're already successful. And Chris Birch of Modifius is another great example, someone who has really a lot of lessons to share. But they're kind of in the place they are now. But wouldn't it be so cool to be able to interview them like 10 years ago, or whatever, when they weren't such a big deal, and that type of, I want to learn what type of mindset they had, what type of, work ethic, and what were their tasks, the things that they valued. I think for myself, one of the most important podcasts that I personally ever recorded was the Board Game Design Lab episode back in 2020, I think, in like December 2020. And by the way, I got permission from Gabe Barrett to actually take that episode and air it on our podcast. I wanted to do like an introduction and then just air that at some point, because that was me before I had experienced, before I had $2 million of sales, or I guess 2.5 now, under our belt. And before I had even experienced a single successful Kickstarter, of my own. That was me and what I did. And I was able to earn, I still, I'm like, dang, that was a lot of work, but I was able to earn like 1,100 emails on an email list without paying for a penny for ads. I started with this concept of that people need to want the product that I'm making. And if I can't figure out a way to get people to like organically want what I'm making, is it really even worth making? Is the market kind of telling me that they don't want this? And so I struggled hard to figure out how can I be relevant. And I recorded that podcast during the midst of that. And I actually have listened to it several times on my own, thinking, I'm a different person now. And I think about different things and I forget. There's so much you forget from when you're really hustling, trying to, you know, claw any level of market share at all. And every email is like, oh my goodness, I got an email. I don't want them to unsubscribe. And all of that. You're trying to gain relevance. That those lessons I learned at that time, I just wouldn't be able to tell you all of those things that I concentrated into that one podcast. But that's because I was at that time, and I was fully in the trenches thinking about those things, and those are the people that like make me excited. And the problem with asking people like that for an interview is like, I don't know who those people are. They don't have a name yet. And so yeah, I mean, especially if you're listening, what is this like, over 30 minutes into the podcast, if you're listening now, like you could be those people. And I would be very open to having you guys on just to hear what it is that you guys are doing, because there's so many people that have worked on, and I'm maybe this is a caveat that I can add, but like I'm not that interested in interviewing somebody that has just started, that hasn't experienced roadblocks, that hasn't, that like, this is what I want to do. And this is like my big idea. I want to have some like, you don't have to have launched a Kickstarter yet, but I really want you to have suffered, so that by the time we interview you, you can kind of share your experiences. And my favorite people to interview overall are the ones that have this big epic project that they've been working on for like more than a year to 2 years. There are some people who've been working on something for like 5 years and it's finally culminating in a big campaign, or they have this big vision. I am very excited about interviewing those people. And honestly, backing their projects, I kind of get excited about, just an indie project that somebody has worked on for so long. One person that I reached out to is Cody Miller of can't remember his company, but the games that he's made Zia Legends of Adrift, but most recently he made a game called Iridia, which is this very large, changing kind of you know campaign based game that changes as the decisions you make, the places you go. You'll see the map change. A lot of different locations to explore and events to experience. And so that's something that I would love to just talk to him and say, how did you make a game like this? And the marketing, it was like $1.5 million, I think, or no, it was 1.25 or close to that, just to fund the project. And it was a very uncommon, pattern for funding the project. I think they raised 750,000 in the first 48 hours. And so they were like 50% funded. This is not a normal like funding goal. It's like $1 million or more. And just that whole, like, that's really like, if you don't make your funding goal, if you don't get most of the way to your funding goal, like, are you gonna even make it in the board game industry? And so that kind of thing, I can't wait to interview people like that.
Yeah, I feel like the early part of our podcast was following you on your journey from Deliverance not being made and kind of going through your Kickstarter process. There was always that kind of thread to kind of ground and the podcast kind of grew with your journey. Now that's over with, I kind of feel like we need to revisit that. We can do that with obviously Star Clash and like just kind of a different type of game. But also I'm working on a board game as well, and I think this is going to help us kind of, you know,
Yeah,
in terms
remind
of
us of some of those lessons.
remind us some of those lessons and go back to some of those kind of earlier lessons. And obviously now with a lot more experience and with the industry that has changed, we can then revisit those really important topics and go from there. Like organic marketing is something that needs to be done well, and things have changed. Is Facebook, even the Facebook groups, even the place to do it anymore? I know that was a big push 5 years ago.
Right.
It was like the place to go. But now I've seen a lot of communities kind of get off platform and go to kind of smaller niche groups like Discord or WhatsApp groups and things like that. So you might find that Facebook groups are less effective now than they were 5 years ago. So if you listen to some of those older episodes,
Yeah.
some of that might not translate over. But generally, I think we always try to make sure that the marketing things that we do share are transcendent and that they kind of stand the test of time. There's certain things which aren't going to change, and so no matter what podcast episode you're listening to, hopefully there's enough there that you can kind of walk away with something valuable that you could apply to your particular context. But I do think it's important for us to revisit some of those earlier topics and to readdress them and update them and to continue to go and grow.
Yeah. Yeah, one episode that I share probably more than any other is it's episode 14, which is the virtuous cycle. It's the probably the thing that I personally, as a marketing expert, am most known for. I've seen it in like Ori Kagan gives lectures and talks about the virtuous cycle. He's a videographer that is kind of getting into story, like marketing through storytelling, and others as well. But the concept of the three pillars of your landing page, your email list, and then your social community that really is something that is going to stand the test of time, and has for 5 years. It's only become more and more important. And I look at things in a scientific way. I use things like so there are um we'll call them hypotheses and things that you can test, and if they work a number of times, they can become a theory. And then the theory never becomes a fact. Like, for example, one very commonly accepted fact or law is the phrase. The law of gravity is really the theorem of gravity, because there could be cases in which gravity behaves differently, that the equations we got don't explain. And in that case, the gravity doesn't need to change, the equations will change, right? And so the law is, laws. The laws of thermodynamics and other things like that, right? But gravity is one that I found fascinating in college. Was an astronomy professor taught me that is actually a theorem. And, the theorem has to be consistent for over 100 years and whatever to be kind of in the ballpark of being a law. And that is one particular one that was debated, at least at the time that I was in college. And so in the same way, our marketing theories, they have to be corrected when we reach something that challenges them, or we really have to investigate. In fact, one of them that is real, like, rubber meets the road understanding is, there are many people that say, like, I only want followers on Kickstarter, or I only want, followers on GameFound. The people that hit notify me on launch on the Kickstarter GameFound pre-launch pages, those are the only people that I care about. I don't really care about an email list and that kind of thing. And I am really my theory, this virtuous cycle theory, would say that no, that's you need to. So the purpose of the virtuous cycle is to win the right to communicate with your audience across as many different mediums as possible, so that if Facebook cancels all their, or archives all their chats, all their group chats, and kind of kills the engagement of their groups because of so many random things on Facebook you don't really, want to
Or AI
participate in.
being
Yeah.
unwillingly thrust in your group.
Yes, on multiple occasions, which we've disabled. But holy cow, it really has nerfed the engagement of a lot of Facebook groups. Then thank goodness I have an email list that I can let people know where the next place is that we're gonna keep we're gonna keep engaged over there. And so, like, if you put all your eggs into the Kickstarter followers basket and the Kickstarter backers basket, and or the GameFound followers or whatever backers, I mean, you're gonna miss out on a lot of people. Our Kickstarter campaign, the latest Kickstarter campaign, we have like 3,400 backers, and I have over 10,000 people on my email list. And I spend all this time every single month making sure that there's an update at the end of the month published on Kickstarter. And if I fail to send an email, then I only reach a third of my audience. allegedly reach a third of my audience, right? If I send the email, I communicate with 100% of my audience, at least 40% of which, that's over 4,000 people, will actually open and read what it is that I've written. And if I do a resend, then it goes up to like 50 to 60%. And that is a huge, a big number over the actual Kickstarter backers. So I would rather have 6,000 people opening up and reading my stuff than 3,400 people that, are sent my stuff. Who knows how many of those people actually open up and read? But with the email list, I can tell how many people opened, and it's very, very valuable. But, so that's one thing that our theory was like, well, no, the theory says that that's not the best way. The Kickstarter followers is not the best way, because you can't use your Kickstarter followers you can't use Kickstarter to win the right to communicate across multiple platforms as well as you can an email list. And the Kickstarter follower is something that's beneficial. And so I will use the virtuous cycle process to get Kickstarter followers too. But they what's more valuable, having one email or one Kickstarter follower? My contention is the email, because you can use that one email to get a follower. You can automatically redirect people after they sign up for your email list, to the Kickstarter page. It's not like it's mutually exclusive one or the other, unless you're going from the Kickstarter follower route. Then that's it. You've got they clicked follow, and that's all. But the email, it's like they subscribe via email list. I redirect them to the Kickstarter page or a social community of mine. I send an automatic email that says welcome, that has links to my social communities. There are so many other ways that connect to various communities through the email, right? And so over time, that's been one theory that has just been proven correct. And then another one is like the way that customers want to be treated is another one that's like a theory of ours, that you want to be as personal as possible. You have to make what I call the noble sacrifice of like um, your personal privacy. You have to take a little bit of allow people a little bit of insight into who you are as a person and who you are as a company, because crowdfunding, they're also, especially if you're new, they're supporting you and your vision and your company. They have to be a fan of what it is that you are doing. And so that's a theory of ours. And then the whole like $1 pledge, that's still a thing. The pre-pledge for like you're pre-backing a campaign to get some sort of tchotchke, that cover 9 card expansion or whatever, a free miniature that normally costs $5 or $10. And that I believe is contrary to making people feel like they belong and that like they're valued. I think that you're valuing their money. And we actually have one client that we launched their first project like try 3 years ago, that decided to use this strategy. And we can see like in all the charts, all the numbers are bad, except their launch day numbers were way better. Launch day was way better. And then every day, their backer count every day after that launch day was less than the first campaign that they had, the actual raw backer data, because they're going to delight all of their fans that got the game the first time and loved it. Sure, yeah, I'll take a 9 card expansion. Like, I'm going to back this game anyway. I'll pre-purchase for a dollar or whatever, become a VIP. But you're not winning over new fans that way, and you're just like treating people like cash cows to be slaughtered for profit. And I think that's dumb. So don't do it. And the theory shows that's dumb, right? So
Well, the market also shows us, we know of certain board game communities and groups that actually blacklist publishers that use that method, particularly because they think that it's a way that they don't like being engaged with, to such a degree that they actually blacklist publishers that use this method. So there's a quite a visceral disliking of it. So I would also advise that
yeah,
people just avoid it if possible. And
yeah,
you can always just use a survey. Does the exact same thing. Just survey your email list, and give them something. Say, hey, we're going to give you a free copy of the game to one random person who does the survey. It takes 2 minutes to do, or a minute, depending on how complex you want it to be. And that way it's positive. You're giving them something. You're still in fact, you're getting better information because they can actually kind of share their thoughts and where they are. And yeah, you're also giving them something. So I always feel like this method is I think I understand what it's seeking to do, and I think it's good. Like people want to be able to launch with confidence, but I think there's better ways of doing it. And I think as a publisher, you need to think of better ways of achieving the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that you need to have this guiding light that sort of navigates through treacherous waters. And I use that analogy to say, like, if you're on a ship, my wife and I are reading this book called well, this series called the Brother Band Chronicles, and by Rick Riordan, and I think Rick Riordan, maybe that guy's the anyway. So we when people navigate while sailing on ships, they use the stars, and if they can't see the stars, that's a problem. So you have to have some sort of um, you know something that helps you navigate. I use the concept of the lonely mountain and the Hobbit, right? Like you see the mountain in the distance, and you might have to go through forests and whatever. But when you get to the other side of that forest, regardless of how you had to get through there, you can right yourself and right your direction with the lonely mountain in the distance that's poking above the clouds and that you can see. You're like, we ventured off and now we need to straighten our path again. So I use those analogies, at least the lonely mountain, probably too often to explain this. But there are times when people are about to launch their Kickstarter and they um, get a last minute, chance at exposure, or or they launch a Kickstarter, don't get the funding they needed, and they're like, well, I don't know, I could just dump $10,000 into ads right now and just really try to get myself funded, or whatever. And it's like you got to have a guiding light that will help the crazy version of you that's desperate for that for success, for a taste of success. You've got to have a guiding light that will sort of tame your wild inhibitions at that moment. You could lose a lot of money, you could make bad decisions, and that kind of thing. So it's something that you know these theories that we have that we kind of operate by, the customer needing it to be a two-way relationship where the customer feels like they're supporting you because you're a good company and you're doing great things, and they get to be a part of this journey. Well, to show that you value your customer in the same way by certainly delivering a great product that they're going to love, but also helping them feel heard, helping them feel like they actually have influence over the end product, and that their opinion is valued, and that it's valued not just if they back at the all in level, or not just if they pre-pledge as a VIP. Like if you give some people the best deal and other people don't get as good of a deal, it's like, well, you know, those other people are not going to feel as valued. And so if you have an early bird pledge, if you've got like, that $1 VIP that could cause other people to miss out, I mean, those types of things are all kind of contrary to that, and they're not, it's not like one thing is going to ruin you, but it is, again, it's like a small thing, that little bit of AI in that one image. I don't know, is that actually evidence of a bigger problem that lay underneath? And so that's and one of the problems like with the survey is like you mentioned, like, hey, survey your people, see if they like the $1 VIP thing. The people that you're definitely, I mean, you're not gonna get bad information necessarily that way, but you will get skewed information because those people have backed you, support you, and whatnot. What I'm most curious about and concerned about are the strangers that don't have a relationship with your company yet, that when they join and they see that, oh, there was an early bird pledge that was 48 hours and I found it after, 1 week, I guess I'm not, as valued. It's kind of a bummer that I have to pay $5 more just because, you sent me an ad a week late and, or whatever, right? It's like I feels bad, man.
Well,
Feels
I
bad.
find with the survey as well that the fact that they actually do the survey also highlights something that's of value.
Mhm.
So no matter what they even say, the fact that they even did the survey itself is a data point that you can say, oh, that's interesting. If you send out a survey to 1,000 people on your email list and you get 10 responses,
Oh man.
then
That's brutal.
you know that there's a problem, right? So the survey also acts as that litmus test
Mhm.
to know if there a problem with my email list. Is there a problem with the kind of the way I've been gathering my emails? Maybe you did a giveaway and you've got a bunch of people on email list who don't care about your project. They were just there because they wanted something free,
Yep.
or it's a very old list, or that you're targeting with your ads was very broad and it wasn't niche enough, and the people aren't that qualified. So um, you also listen to what your audience is not doing or not saying, and that's also important. That can reveal a lot about something. So, are
Yeah.
people even opening your emails? Are people even clicking your links? Where are they clicking your links? And
Mhm.
all that can be very useful information to help better serve your customer at the end of the day. I think,
Right.
like, you talked about this kind of like Northern Star or Lonely Mountain. I also think that if you just generally kind of treat customers as you would like to be treated, this is you're making a game because you're a gamer and you felt like there wasn't a need, there wasn't a game on the market that met the need that you wanted to create or the experience you wanted to create. And then how would you like to be spoken to? How would you like to be treated? And I think that's a pretty good starting point to start off with. How would I like to be treated? What kind of things would delight me if I was part of this community and I was really excited about this? Uh, and then yeah, go from there.
Yeah. And there's this other kind of concept I'd love to mention, which is a lot of the time people talk. So when I say people, I mean publishers that are trying to build their email lists and whatnot. They talk to people as if they are their rabid hardcore fans. um Sometimes people make mistakes, publishers make mistakes talking to fans, talking to their email lists and whatnot about, or in ways that they're not ready to be talked to. um if you treat people like they're super fans when they are like just window shopping, they won't connect with your messaging as well as if you help them along, like, this is what our game is, this is why it's interesting, rather than being like, aren't you guys excited, for deliverance, like, aren't you all excited to slay demons by the power of God? It's like, I don't think so. But like, if I came at a different angle, like, to the people listening to this podcast, like, hey, I funded a game, it was called Deliverance, I had a lot of challenges and things that I want to talk about and share, hopefully they will help you guys along your journey. Then it's like, well, I mean, I'll listen to that, but I don't want to, like,
Mm,
it feels like I'm like Paula White, talking, like preaching at a pulpit or something, in one way. And the other way is like, look, I'm a creator just like you guys, and I'm going to share the lessons I learned from the process, the experience I went through. That's something that I think, especially people listening to this podcast, can like latch on to. And then, yeah, maybe they'll play Deliverance and be super stoked about it and a hardcore fan. But you really have to be focus on where people are at right now. One of the I'll use Chip Theory Games as an example. I love that company, and I want to interview those people. By the way, I want to interview those two brothers that started the company. And anyway, and maybe Gilly, the marketing guy. So the um, the latest update for Elder Scrolls, which is Betrayal of the Second Era, is an expansion. It's on GameFound right now. It's in its final hours as we record this. They posted an episode, or an update, sorry, that was just so silly and was talking to the audience in a way that was like very funny. Like, one of the people working the company did like a takeover of the updates. Normally someone responsible does it, but this week or this update, I'm doing it, and it was very silly and had lots and lots of references to Kung Pao, the silly cult classic movie. And it was great, and I really enjoyed it. But that's because I enjoy all the things they make. I really enjoy the product, and I'm a fan, so I'm like part of the crew, and I'm joking around, and that's perfect. But if that was the first update that they posted, it wouldn't be good, right? And
yeah,
take show me you take it seriously, and then I want to
yeah,
joke and play and whatnot, right? So I think that's uh, maybe illustrates the point a little bit as well.
yeah. And I think the key is just being relatable. On I just it might sound like a cliche, but the internet's becoming increasingly clickbaity, shock and awe.
Yep.
Everyone's trying to sell something. Not you don't know what you could trust with AI. It's becoming an increasingly confusing place. So to have someone who's just speaks the truth and just kind of is I suppose just straight talking and
Yep.
is relatable, not trying to impress people, not trying to get clicks, not trying to get clips,
Mhm.
not trying to grow their presence. That they just have a genuine desire to bring something cool into the world that they can share with other people who are like them. I think there's something that's very attractive about that
Yeah.
prospect. And if you can communicate that to your audience, I think you're going to be a lot better than trying to impress them with how amazing a game designer you are, or impress them by how skilled you are at a certain game, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I think that you do a lot better just being humble and relatable. And hey, I'm like you. One thing I never want to do is I don't want people to listen to this podcast and then think I'm some different person. They meet me at a convention somewhere. It's like, man, that guy was completely different.
Yeah.
Like I really hope that my personality and my character and even my tone, it
Yep.
can kind of uh,
Yeah.
it can be transferable, because I've met people like that. I've met people like you see them
Yeah.
on the internet, see them in real life, they're
They
completely
don't even have the
different.
same voice. Yeah. I remember the first time I met Bruce Buffer, I was the Bruce Buffer, I is like the announcer of the UFC. And when I was a white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, this is like 18 years ago, I was grappling in my first tournament in at like the San Diego County Fairgrounds, and Bruce Buffer was there doing the announcements, and I talked to him, and I was so shocked at his voice because he's famous for his voice, and it was totally different. And just like when it was in a conversation, I was like, it's like, if you've never seen your dad without his beard and then he shaves it one day, you're like, who are you? And, babies cry and whatnot. I was seriously about to cry because I heard his voice and it was a lie. It's all a lie.
Yeah.
And of course, then he goes and does his announcing thing, and he talks like this, it's and it's just like, wow, that was very different, and I didn't expect it. And so, yeah, if you see me at a convention, this is me. Like it's one of the things that it's a lot easier to record content like every week if you can just be you, instead of if you have to be the version of you that's like on versus
Mhm.
versus the version of you that's off. And I know a lot of people feel compelled to have a personality about things, and I think that it's a mistake, always a mistake, you know. Yep, yep. So somebody butt scooting towards you on the battlefield in the Middle Ages so they can heel hook you. That's probably why Brazilian Jiu Jitsu didn't exist at the time.
Yeah. It wasn't successful in Europe, Middle
Yeah.
Ages.
That's right. So anyway, we've gone a long way to talk about how we want to improve our podcast, and hopefully you found some very useful marketing lessons along the way. That's really the whole intent, is whatever we're talking about, this is what we deal with every day. Um, and one other thing I want to mention is that we have kind of struggled in some ways because not every one of our clients are tabletop. We've got video games, we've got apps, we've got books, we've got lots of different. We even did a
Restaurants.
podcast about the Exorcist files. That's like crazy. Yeah, got restaurants and preschools and plumbers and
Tree
SEO
cutting.
marketing, yeah, tree trimming, and a million different industries. But half of our business is in crowdfunding and running e-commerce. So, we have a staff of 8 now, which is more than double from when actually, I think it's exactly double from when we started our podcast 5 years ago. But it's something that I um, I think that it's better that our podcast is kind of focused more around tabletop stuff, because it's like what I'm really interested in. I'm a super tabletop nerd, and games in general are very engaging, and it's the majority of our clients. The majority of our crowdfunding clients, at least, are gaming. And that's not to say that people that are outside of the gaming niche, if you have like the coolest belt or the fanciest pants and you want to bring those to Kickstarter, that's not to say that those types of companies aren't going to um, find value from what it is that we're sharing. But I think that the tabletop niche, I think I want to be more open and wear that on our sleeve, that that's really who we are. And so I don't want to be like, well, whether you have a tabletop game or, a new cooler or whatever, I feel like, I don't mind being in that niche. It's like where most of our expertise, I feel like where we best serve at the moment. What do you think about that?
I thought
Not
we
really something we've talked
I
about,
thought we
but
were
I mean,
always
yeah.
doing that.
I think most of our listeners did too. But yeah, that's one of those. That's kind of my problem, that I'm like, well, I don't want to exclude other people by, talking about tabletop all the time, but that just waters down the product a little bit.
It does. Well, you
And
have to do this with your marketing, even for your game. Your
yeah,
product doesn't exist for everyone. I think understanding limitations of your product, and I think it comes back down to game design. Like, what is your goal? And no, one thing that I'm trying to do with my game design is I'm trying to create a very narrow experience. And I want it to be something that you play, you can put away, and you put on the shelf, and it's not trying to be everything, and it's not trying to do everything. It's just trying to do one thing really well, and I think that what makes things good. Because I think about certain games that I've played, they don't try to do everything. Like Valve games are a prime example of this. They're only single player games, apart from
yeah,
Team Fortress 2 and Counter Strike and those other ones. But most they became the studio that they are today is because they did single player really really well,
yeah,
and level design really really well, and immersion, and that's what they're known for. And I always walk away from a Valve game, like I've probably only played Valve games a handful of times, but they have this lasting impact on me. I don't feel the need to play them again and again and again,
yeah,
because I've kind of got that experience, and it was executed so well that it's like, okay, that's a lasting experience on me,
yeah,
and I can walk away from that and be like, yeah, I got that, and I'm satisfied with that. So that's important when it comes to marketing, where you're not trying to be like, hey, this game is for everyone. Everyone likes this game. It's like, well,
all ages, all
that's
people.
that's not actually very helpful. I think it's much better to say that this game is for this type of person who's looking for this type of experience, and to really narrow in on those people. And that doesn't mean necessarily excluding other people. It very might well be that your game is very adaptable and it's for all ages, but that's not very helpful when it comes to people kind of really drawing in on it and kind of narrowing in on it. So that's important.
Yep. And one other thing, I mean, Richard is he actually started with our podcast. I want to say like the first 150 episodes, Rick was on every single podcast, and he does our outro every single episode. And the robot Richard thing, like maybe we change that. I don't know. I'd be open-minded to hearing what you guys have to say. Usually like the ending of an episode, people might not listen, or they skip, or it's playing passively, and so they'll hear it every 10th episode because they're in a position where they're not able to go to the next episode, or whatever, in their car, or whatever, and they can't reach their phone, they can't look at the phone. um but I want even the ending to be useful. And if we just are like, all right, bye everybody, like Joe Rogan does, then okay, let's do that. But I know that normal podcasts ask for things like, hey, please rate us on whatever podcasting platform you listen to. That is very helpful, by the way. If you have not rated us and you've listened to 50 episodes,
What are you
then,
doing, you traitor?
traitor. No, we want you to rate us. We want you to give us a 5-star rating and a comment and whatever. That'd be great. But I wonder, does what serves the people that listen to this? And that's the main thing. So I guess on that thought, maybe we'll have Robot Richard send us out, possibly for one of the last times, but I don't know. We'll see.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridge, DIST.com, let them know we sent you. All right.